to get him. Oh, and the other thing, he worked a 72-hour shift.
Welcome to the Oregon City Council regular meeting for July 24th, 2023, and the time now is 7 p.m. And we will open the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Ms. Rawson, will you take a roll call of council members present?
Mr. Davish?
Here.
Mr. Drake?
Here.
Mr. Horniak?
Here.
Mrs. Paula?
Here.
Mr. Reeves?
Here.
Mr. Wallensack?
Here.
Mr. Zale?
Here. Also present at tonight's meeting is Mayor Michael Safarian, City Administrator Joel Major, Clerk of Council Cassie Rawson, Law Director Melissa Pepora, Public Service Director Paul Roman, Chief of Police Brandon Began, Assistant Chief of Police Ryan Spangler, Fire Chief Clayton O'Brien, Assistant Fire Chief Mark Mullins, Building and Zoning Commissioner Stephen Shrake, and Finance Director Nick Roman. Council, we have someone to speak before us this evening for persons and delegations from the League of Women's Voters in Toledo, Lucas County, and I will introduce Nancy Gurney, if she would come to the podium and tell us what you're here for.
Good evening, everyone. I feel like I should be facing this way, but my name is Nancy Gurney. I'm actually a resident of Ottawa County. I live in Lakeside, Ohio, if any of you have been there. It is our 150th anniversary year, so please stop by at some point. I am a member of the League of Women Voters of Toledo, Lucas County, because my husband and I lived in Lucas County for 30 years before we moved out. But the League of Women Voters is an organization that was founded in 1920, and it is a nonpartisan organization, but it is a political organization. So we make decisions at times about issues. Any issue that we would study, we may make a recommendation to be for or against that particular issue. And that's the case of issue 1 that's on the ballot in August 8th. The issue 1 is started by the General Assembly of the state of Ohio, and it's an effort to change the Constitution of the state of Ohio to require a 60% pass rate for any initiative that is started by the citizens. And that it was quickly put on the ballot because in only late last year, the state of Ohio abolished August elections because of the expense of them, but then decided to put this on the ballot in August. The proposed amendment would require that 60% would be required to pass. It also would require that petition signatures be gathered from all 88 counties instead of the current proposal of 44 counties, and that the number of people who signed the petition to amend the Constitution would have to be 5% of the people who voted in the prior governor's election. So there are some, and then they also are getting rid of the curing period where now we have a 10-day period to go out there and clarify any problems with a petition signature. So what I've given you here is a description, or actually the text of the amendment, the proposed amendment, and then the league's explanation of issue one. And as I said before, the league studies, and because of our mandate and our commitment to registering people to vote, to make voting easier for all people and to make voting universal. On the second page of this, there's a section that is in support of a yes, and then there's a section that's in support of a no, a vote. Currently, or in the last 110 years, the Constitution of Ohio has been amended 127 times. That it's changed in 1912. Voters, the citizens put 71 proposed amendments on the ballot. Only 19 of those 71 passed, which is a 27% pass rate. Initiatives that were proposed by the General Assembly were 108, and 108 passed of the 156 by the General Assembly for a 69% pass rate. So citizen-initiated initiatives, there have been 71 proposed, 19 passed in 110 years. That average is about 1 every 5 years of a citizen proposed amendment to the Constitution. It's not really too much of a problem. So based on that, I urge you to read the information and vote on August 8th or vote early. Early voting is going on right now. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Nancy. Council, any questions or comments for Nancy? Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please vote.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Council, the next order of business is the approval of the meeting minutes from the July 10th, 2023 regular meeting and the July 17th, 2023 Committee of the Whole meeting.
Mr. President,
Mr. Reeves.
I move that we accept the minutes as presented for the Committee of the Whole meeting on July 17th of 2023 and the regular council meeting of July 10th, 2023 as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves.
Second.
Second by Mr. Davish. Thank you, Mr. Davish. Council, are there any objection? Hearing none, the meeting minutes for July 10th and July 17th, 2023 have been accepted. Council, before we get into our regular meeting agenda, we need to add item 104, 2023, which was not discussed or brought up last week.
Mr. President,
Mr. Reeves.
so moved.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves.
Second.
Second by Mr. Davish. Thank you, Mr. Davish. Council, are there any objections? Hearing none, item 104, 2023 has been added to this week's agenda. The first item is item 100, 2023, which is presented by Mayor Michael Safarian and City Administrator Joel Major, and I will defer to Mr. Major.
Thank you, Council President, and members of council. I don't have anything to add, but I will reiterate that this is a renewal. This would put this renewal levy on the ballot, and we did get the certificate of estimated property tax revenue from the county auditor's office. It is up about $24,000 annually to about $249,000. And this is what we budgeted previously is about $225,000. So it is a marginal increase for the next 5 years, and this vote would put it on the ballot. It does need to pass tonight if we can get it on there. If we get it passed, it needs to go on and sent to, this ordinance needs to be sent to the county auditor's office. And Cassie, you'll have to remind me what the date is, August 9th?
August 8th.
August 8th. Yeah, so August, yeah, for the special election. Oh, this is for the general election, sorry.
Oh,
This
yeah.
is
Yeah,
for
this is on the
Deadline.
general
The
election,
deadline
yes.
is-
With our deadline is
Deadline
August
9th.
August 9th, so.
Board of Elections told us.
Yeah, that's from the Board of Elections, gave us the direction on that, but getting it passed tonight will allow us to get it there sooner. So we'll have it well ahead of time. Yeah.
I'll take it
Yep. So we'll have it in if it passes tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Major.
Yep.
Council, any questions or comments regarding item 100? Hearing none, I will assign item 100, 2023 as ordinance 100, 2023, and ask Ms. Ralston to read in the record.
Declaring the necessity of levying a renewal property tax of 1/2 mil for senior services in the city of Oregon, subject to a vote of the electors and declaring an emergency.
Council,
Mr. President.
Mr. Wallen's
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move for passage of ordinance number 100 of 2023 as an emergency measure.
Thank you, Mr. Wallen's.
Second.
Second by Mr. Drake or Mr. Reeves.
You can have it.
Either one.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves. Ms. Ralston, will you take a roll call vote of council, please?
Mr. Wallensack,
Yes.
Mr. Reeves,
Yes.
Mr. Davish.
Yes.
Mr. Drake,
Yes.
Mr. Horniak,
Yes.
Mrs. Paula,
yes,
Mr. Zale.
Yes. Thank you, council. Ordinance 100, 2023 passes with 7 yeas and 0 nays.
Mr. President,
Mr. Reeves?
I have a question here. I mean, and not about the item or the ordinance that we just passed. If a citizen would like to speak on any of the opposed items that we have coming up tonight, can they speak at the time that is proposed?
Negative. Generally, once a meeting, according to our charter, once a meeting is started with reading of the ordinances, there is no discussion. That's why we had the committee of the whole meeting. That's where discussion would come up. They're allowed to speak after the meeting, yes.
Okay, I'm just asking because of the fact that if it's already passed, it's sort of a moot point for them to speak.
Correct.
And if there's people here in the,
I agree with that. And that's why we had a committee of the whole meeting where people can discuss these items before we come to this meeting. Actually, to be honest with you, I've had discussions with people that I would like to move the person speaking before the meeting like it used to be, instead of after.
so,
Mayor?
It's certainly not, so if you permitted it, somebody could speak to any of these items at any time.
Sure.
So if there were questions regarding an item, I think it would be appropriate for someone to speak to that item. To speak on general topics that aren't on the agenda, that would be what we do after the meeting. But I certainly would be able to address these items as they come up.
okay, thank you. I mean, that's what I was sort of getting at, and I wanted to make sure that, I know that there might be people that would like to speak on a couple of the items that we're gonna discuss tonight that are in the audience, but it's sort of a moot point if they want to speak afterwards.
Correct.
After we've already voted on it. I mean, it's,
Okay, Mr. Reeves' point taken, and I'll allow it.
thank you.
Okay, next item for discussion is item 101, 2023, presented by Mayor Michael Safarian and Public Service Director Paul Roman, and I will defer to Mr. Roman.
Mr. President, we did present this last week, and I don't know if there's any other questions to what was presented, but I'm happy to answer anything.
That's correct. Council, any questions for Mr. Roman regarding item 101, 2023? Hearing none, is there anybody in the audience that would like to comment on item 101, 2023?
Take it.
Hearing none, I will assign item 101, 2023 and assign it as an ordinance 101, 2023 and ask Ms. Ralston to read the record.
Authorizing the mayor, finance director, and director of public service to enter into a right-of-way agreements with Bowers Development LLC and Richard L. Binder for the acquisition of property for the Otter Creek Stream and Floodplain Restoration Project and declaring an emergency.
Council.
Mr. President,
Mr. Davish.
I move for passage of ordinance 101, 2023 as emergency.
Thank you, Mr. Davish.
Second.
Second by Ms. Pauloff. Thank you, Ms. Pauloff. Ms. Rawls, will you take a roll call vote of council, please, on item 101?
Mr. Davish?
Yes.
Mrs. Paula?
Yes.
Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Horniak?
Yes.
Mr. Reeves?
Yes.
Mr. Wallenzeck?
Yes.
Mr. Zale?
Yes, thank you, council. Ordinance 101, 2023 passes with 7 yeas and 0 nays. Next item for discussion is item 102, 2023, presented by Mayor Michael Safarian and Finance Director Nick Roman. And I will defer to Mr. Roman.
Thank you, Mr. President. As we talked about last week, this is a resolution to accept the petition for sanitary sewer on Coy Road. We talked about it, the process last week. If there's any questions, please let me know.
Council, any questions or comments on item 102?
Mr. President,
Mr. Mayor?
as Mr. Reeves brought up, this may be the item that
No.
there might be people that might have questions, so
It's fine.
refer to the audience to see if anybody does want to.
Let me refer
ask
to
a
council
question.
first. Council, any questions or comments? Hearing none, is there anybody in the audience that has any questions or comments? Yes, sir. Come to the front, please. State your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Mike Atkins. The address is 3500 Brown Road. My question was, and I had talked to Paul a little bit about it, if they are unable to provide the sewer for our side of the road. I'm on the south side. If they can't, because of all the utilities at the street, how would we be affected at that point?
Mr. President,
Mr. Mayor?
if you are not able to be served, you certainly can't be assessed. You can only be assessed if you
If
are
they can-
benefited.
If they can bring it over to our side of the,
That's correct.
okay.
So if any property, if you're petitioned in, you can only be assessed if you are shown to have a benefit. There's another little factor in there also, that if you can only assess up to a value of 1/3 the value of the property. Of course, this sanitary sewer, we've had different properties come up where they were almost unbuildable due to the size, so they had very little value. So they could only be assessed of whatever the tax value of that property was, which may be very little, and so they would not be assessed much for the property. But in the case, as long as you were benefited, you could be assessed. If not,
And the
You are not.
assessment is based on the
Front.
building and land, correct?
No, it's based on front footage.
Just
front
the front
footage,
end,
yeah,
okay.
the front footage. And then there is a thing called an area charge that if you were in the project, you have an area charge that is rated at the value or the amount of acreage you have at your property. But residential properties, if it's unimproved, are charged charged the maximum of 2 units unless they improve the property. And me and Mr. Roman were having a discussion about what the area charge was in your area. We got different area charges based on which interceptor, the main sewer it goes into. And the older ones that were built a long time ago have lesser costs. And we believe the one there is somewhere between $100 and some dollars and $300. We'll check and
Yeah,
we'll know, but there's another one that's $962. Yours is not that one. So it's either the 300 or the $180 or $90 one. It's one of those, but
That's where
residential,
it looks like it's coming in at.
that is the area charge, and you pay that when you get the sewer tap fee.
Oh,
That comes in that when you would go to hook into the sewer. That charge is not deferrable to property taxes. The front foot assessment is something that could be deferred. You have so much time to pay it, otherwise it's assessed to your property tax over, and I think we used the 10-year period on this, is that?
I think it
believe so.
was.
Yeah, the 10-year period.
Is there a percentage for the loan or that balance carried forward? Do you know what that, is it tied to anything?
The interest rate, like over 10 years, is what you're asking?
Yeah, what
What
the
that would be,
interest rate would
it's
be.
usually at the current, whatever the current tax rate is.
Yeah, you have 60 days from when it's passed to make the payment in full, and then after that, it would be assessed for 10 years at the federal interest rate.
That's what prime, I guess. Is that
Yeah.
what it's tied to? Okay.
Yeah, I had a discussion with you before, and I was thinking it had limited chances of going through because 4 other times people tried to pass it without much success. But due to the length of the project and that the first 4, 5 houses have already been served now by a cash to tap, it made it a little easier for someone to pass the petition with success. And I'm sorry, I told you, I didn't think it would.
Well,
Yeah,
I
it would do, but
understand how it works.
yeah.
And I understand the improvement. I mean, it's a better
better system.
way to go, yeah.
Yeah, we usually say that anything people put down their drain, they really choose not to ever see again. With the on-lot system, you do get to see it sometimes. so.
Mr. President,
Mr. Reeves.
thank you. I'm a little confused here. We're not going to be able to service the south side of the street?
No, I think.
He didn't say that. He said there's a possibility.
Possibility.
If usually they find a way to, Mr. Roman.
Well, let me say this, Mr. President and Mr. Reeves, Mr. Atkins' property is further back from the road. And that was his primary concern, that if I'm that far back, is there enough fall to serve this by gravity flow? And this resolution is really just starting the design process for us to figure that out. And we think it's possible, but there are some pipelines in the Brown Road right away that could block gravity flow, and that's the real question. So if you can't serve them by gravity flow, even to get to the right-of-way line, then as the mayor said, he couldn't be served. But one question will come up is if we are able to provide him a service tap that's gravity flow, but then he's forced to use a pump, then that becomes a debate, but that doesn't mean he can't be served. He can still be served, he just needs a pump, and that's what makes it more difficult. This property the home is newer and has a new septic, and I understand
Paul,
Mr. Atkins'
I don't think he
concern.
has basement fixtures, is that, you don't?
No,
you don't have to-
And it's very possible we can serve Mr. Atkins
Yeah,
with
I believe-
gravity
Yeah, I
flow,
believe there is
so-
a chance that it could work, but I
Right.
know.
But
it
that's always
depends
the
on the
debate.
grade for your
Yeah.
storm and your water
Yeah.
line.
Yep, now the north side,
I thought we had enough depth.
the north side can be easily served. There's no doubt
Yeah,
in
you're
our mind.
missing most of your utilities.
Yep.
On that side. but
Yep.
Coming to ours. could be
Yep.
an issue.
We'll determine it through design, but,
When would you know? Something like
well,
roughly.
yeah, usually we'll get a professional survey done and then we'll do the engineering in-house and go through it. It'll be a couple months to figure everything out and lay it out, but
Sure.
it'll go quicker, than I would argue, than with a consulting
So-
firm.
Okay.
So, yeah,
Early fall, we probably have an
yep,
answer.
yep, yep.
Okay, that's all I had at this time. So,
Thank you, Mr. Atkins.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Please come to the podium and state your name and address, please, for the record.
I'm Bob Anderson, 4601 Brown Road. How far does your 1,079 feet east of Coy Road, where does that end? Are you to Lollendorf yet or?
No, still far from it. Here,
If you step forward, you can look at that. It's on.
it's on the exhibit to the ordinance, but yeah, it just reaches. Right.
This is where
Here's
Mr.
Coy.
Atkins' property is with his newest construction. There's the intersection of Brown and Coy.
Right.
So it doesn't, yours is down. here.
Yeah, okay, that's
Okay.
what I wanted to.
Yeah, okay, no problem.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. President, one thing to note.
Mr. Roman.
One thing to note with this petition, it's probably the last to be served by Coy. For anything further east, it'll be served by Allendorf.
Yes.
And as much as anybody may have voted no for this, it's possible that from Allendorf going a much longer distance and deeper at first to get this far to Coy, they may have a higher assessment and be in the future. So may
I
not
think
be a
the
bad, may not be a bad thing to tie into the sewer now, is all I'm saying.
And the Lauendorf's in the $962.
Correct, and that's a higher area charge. Yep, that's true.
Thank you, Mr. Roman. Council, any other questions or comments? Hearing none, I will assign item 102, 2023 as resolution 102, 2023, and ask Ms. Ralston to read it into the record.
A resolution accepting the petition for the improvement of Brown Road from approximately 422 feet east of Coy Road to approximately 1,079 feet east of Coy Road by the installation of a sanitary sewer, including necessary appurtenances and necessary street restoration and resurfacing, and declaring an emergency.
Council,
Mr. President,
Mr. Davish,
I move for passage of resolution 102, 23 as an emergency.
thank you, Mr. Davish.
Second.
Second by Ms. Paulo. Thank you, Ms. Paulo. Ms. Ralston, will you take a roll call vote of council, please?
Mr. Davish?
Yes.
Mrs. Paula?
Yes.
Mr. Drake? Mr. Horniak?
Yes.
Mr. Reeves?
Yes.
Mr. Wallenzeck?
Yes.
Mr. Zale?
Yes, thank you, council. Resolution 102, 2023 passes with 7 yeas and 0 nays. The next item that was going to be for consideration this evening is item 103, 2023. The presenters of this particular item would like us to not consider this item this evening because they need to get some additional information before it comes before council later. So we will not be discussing item 103, 2023. The next item for discussion will be item 104, 2023, which is presented by Mayor Michael Safarian and Building and Zoning Commissioner Stephen Schrake, and I will defer to Mr. Schrake.
Thank you. This primarily is in regards to our filling a vacant position for building inspector. And in going through the classifications, there were just some housekeeping items as well as alignment with the state building code that needed to be adjusted for all of the descriptions so that they had a uniform change throughout all of the classifications in the building department.
Thank you, Mr. Schrake. Council, any other questions or comments?
Mr. President.
Mr. Drake?
Yeah, I just got one question for Mr. Schrake. Will it affect the current employees that work in there now, or will this be for all new hires?
No, it would not affect the current employees. It would just be for new hires.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Drake. Council, any questions or comments?
Mr. President.
Mr. Horniak, go ahead.
Quick question for Mr. Schrake. As I looked through this and looked at the amendments that were made, basically what was highlighted, what was scratched in there, I don't see anything of any significance to that. It does truly look like a cleanup, word order, word choice, things of that nature. Is that accurate, or is there anything significant to the changes that are being proposed?
That is accurate. The only thing that would be of significant change is that the elimination of legal procedures for enforcement, knowledge, skills, and abilities, that is rests solely with the building official.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Schrake. That's all I have, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Horniak. Council, any questions or comments? Hearing none, I will assign item 104, 2023 as ordinance 104, 2023, and ask Ms. Ralston to read the record, please.
An ordinance amending the classification plan of the City of Oregon as approved by Ordinance 90, 1986, and Ordinance 69 of 2019 by updating and amending the responsibilities, training, and experience requirements of the positions of Commissioner of Building and Zoning Inspection, Residential Plans Examiner, Building Electrical Safety Inspector, Building Inspector, and Electrical Inspector and Plumbing Inspector, and declaring an emergency.
Council.
Mr. President.
Mr. Horniak.
I move for passage of ordinance 104 of 2023 as an emergency measure.
Thank you, Mr. Horniak.
Second.
Second by Mr. Drake. Thank you, Mr. Drake. Ms. Ralston, will you take a roll call vote of council, please?
Mr. Horniak?
Yes.
Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Davish?
Yes.
Mrs. Paula?
Yes.
Mr. Reeves?
Yes.
Mr. Wallensack?
Yes.
Mr. Zale?
Yes, thank you, council. Ordinance 104, 2023 passes with 7 yeas and 0 nays. This completes our agenda for tonight's meeting, and we will now move to the mayor's report.
Thank you, Mr. President, and council, you have been distributed correspondence on some retirement resignations, and I will start with those from the fire department and ask council's concurrence in the acceptance of the resignation of Robert Briggs, employee 2593, and the effective date is June 28th, 2023, and I ask council's concurrence in the acceptance of the resignation of Robert Briggs.
Council,
Mr. President,
Ms. Pauloff.
I move to concur with the mayor's acceptance of the resignation of Robert Briggs effective June 28th, 2023.
Thank you, Ms. Pauloff.
Second.
Second by Mr. Davish. Thank you, Mr. Davish. Council, are there any objections? Hearing none, Mr. Mayor, council does accept the resignation of Robert Briggs.
And next, also from the fire department, I'd ask council's concurrence in the acceptance of Connor Hines, effective, or employee 2433, effective July 12th, 2023.
Council,
Mr. President,
Ms. Pauloff.
I move to concur with the mayor on his acceptance of the resignation of Connor Hines effective July 12th, 2023.
Thank you, Ms. Pauloff.
Second.
Second by Mr. Davish. Thank you, Mr. Davish. Council, are there any objections? Hearing none, Mayor, council does accept the resignation of Connor Hines.
And next, employee from the city of Oregon, I'd ask council's concurrence in the retirement resignation of Thomas Lambrick, effective August 1st, 2023. And I'd ask council's concurrence in the acceptance of the retirement resignation of Thomas Lambrick, once again, August 1st, 2023.
Mr. President,
Mr. Davish.
I concur with the mayor, on the retirement of Thomas Lambert effective August 1st, 2023.
Thank you, Mr. Davish.
Second.
Second by Mr. Drake. Thank you, Mr. Drake. Council, are there any objections? Mayor, council does accept the retirement request.
And lastly, I'd ask council's concurrence in the retirement resignation of Jennifer Clark. And the resignation retirement date is September 30th, 2023, and ask council's concurrence in the acceptance. Once again, Jennifer Clark, September 30th, 2023.
Council,
Mr. President,
Ms. Pauloff.
I move to concur with the mayor's acceptance of the retirement of Jennifer Clark effective September 30th, 2023.
Thank you, Ms. Pauloff.
Second.
Second by Mr. Davish. Thank you, Mr. Davish. Council, are there any objections? Hearing none, Mr. Mayor, council does accept the retirement request from Jennifer S. Clark.
I thank you, and with that, I would conclude my report.
Thank you. Mr. Major.
Thank you, Mr. President. One thing I wanted to report out is I attended the TARTA board meeting last week. They did give me one of the signs that'll be at each of the stops. It just so happens that the in this blank space in the white area is where the route number will be at. Just so happens that since it's going to be on Navarre, the main line will be on Navarre. It's Route 2 will be on Route 2. So, and that is by coincidence, but it's convenient too. And each stop will have their own stop ID number. These will be the signs at each of the stops. We don't have a list of all the stops yet. We're meeting with the TARTA staff, with the engineering department, I believe, next week. And we'll be discussing the route and where the stops will be at. I believe it'll be, right now they have a proposed to head down Navarre to stopping at or around the Walmart building and then turning around and then coming back up and out through Star Avenue. And the last thing is they are planning to have one more public meeting for businesses. Don't have a date scheduled for that, but they want to get some input from businesses about, the stops and where, where the turnarounds are and how they can better serve the businesses in the area. So that's all I have to report on that. And that's all I have, Mr. President. Thank
Mr.
you.
President,
Thank you, Mr. Major. Ms. Paula?
Mr. Mazur, their Board of Trustees on the TARDA Board of Trustees has a representative from every municipality. Did they discuss possibly having someone from Oregon as a representative on that board?
They did not discuss that, but I did inquire about that. So I haven't heard back, and I was gonna check with them next week when we meet.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Paula. Ms. Pepora?
No report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Ms. Pepora. Mr. Roman?
Thank you, Mr. President. I have just one item. I sent an email earlier out to council, but last week we were made aware that we did receive a very large grant, 4.1 million, for our current wastewater treatment plant project. This is through the Ohio Department of Development. It's Governor DeWine's Ohio Builds program. This was the 5th round, and I know we had applied in earlier rounds and were unsuccessful. And I just want to commend Mr. Don Nelson for his hard work and persistence and following up on these grants. When we realized that another round was back out, we did apply and we were very successful. So we do have a large EPA low interest loan. This will definitely cut that down to a third of what we originally thought would have for that loan. So this will be a very good news for our ratepayers and customers. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roman. Mr. Reeves?
No report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves. Mr. Drake?
No report.
Thank you, Mr. Drake. Mr. Wallenczak?
No report this evening, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Wallenczak. Mr. Davish?
No report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Davish. Ms. Pauloff?
No report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Ms. Pauloff. Mr. Horniak?
Thank you, Mr. President. No official report from my standing committee. However, just to report back to the members of council and for the public's notice, the Architectural Design Review Committee met today with the residential developers in our town center project. So we got to look at the proposed houses that they'll be offering in those areas, the design, the elevations, the look to that. Had an opportunity to ask questions, review that, and also come back with some commentary and suggestions from the city according to some things that we can have input in and can have an effect on it. They're excited to get going with this. They're intending to probably build into the first half of the buildable lots, which are 36 total. The discussion was building for 19 potentially at the original run. And they feel that they will have very good luck in selling those, as we agree as well. We added some discussion to the features of the face of the house that will be street facing, if you will, the front elevations, as well as some landscaping. We'll pass along our comments and our review back to them. But very excited that that is taking its next step. Proposed start to that will be probably after the turn of the year, probably once we get into the first quarter past the freezes. They'll start moving into that. The infrastructure is there, so that should help express that in. So very productive, very good, effective meeting today, and looking forward to the next steps in that residential development of the process as well. So that's all I had. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Horniak. I do not have anything for my committee. We do not have anybody signed in to speak before council at the end of the meeting here. So I will, council, do you have any other business before council this evening? Hearing none, I will seek a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Mr.
Thank you,
President.
Mr. Reeves.
Second.
Second by Mr. Drake. Council, any objections? Meeting is adjourned.